Once again, we have a square root in a denominator. I is really the square root of -1. We also have two terms in the denominator. So when we go to rationalize this denominator, we're going to have to multiply top and bottom by two terms. The two terms that we're going to want to use are what we call the conjugate of the original denominator. In the conjugate, you have the same numbers as you did in the original denominator, but now instead of a minus, we're going to do a plus. You always have the opposite sign. And of course, if that's the bottom of the fraction, we're going to multiply the top of the fraction by the same thing, so that we're truly just multiplying by 1. Now we've got to FOIL all over. Wow, this is gonna be a few steps, I think. We're going to have to FOIL on the top, and we're going to have to FOIL on the bottom. So on the top, the first loop, -5 times 7 is -35. -5 times 10i is -50i. -3i times 7 is -21i. And -3i times +10i is -30i squared. Now on the bottom, since we're multiplying two terms by its conjugate, it'll be a little simpler. The first loop, 7 times 7, is 49. And the next two loops are going to cancel each other out. They will be opposites. That's the beauty of the conjugate. The outside loop is +70i. The inside loop will be -70i. And those two, when you combine them, will just be 0. So I'm not going to bother writing either one. And then the -10i times the +10i gives you a -100i squared as your last loop. We can clean up a lot of this. First of all, anytime you have I to a power, like we do here and here, we want to simplify those. I squared is the same thing as -1. So what I really have here in the numerator is -35 minus 50i minus 21i, and then -30 times -1 would be a plus 30. So this thing becomes this thing. In the denominator, 49 stays the same. What we really have is minus 100 times -1. So that's going to give you plus 100. We're running low on room. Might have to start a new page here. You know it's a good problem when it goes on to a second page, right? Anyway, we can combine the like terms in the numerator. -35 plus 30 gives you -5 overall. And then we have a -50i minus 21i gives you minus 71i when you combine the two middle terms. And on the bottom, when you add up the two terms in the bottom, you get 149. Now, we're almost there. I'm going to take this most recent step and start it on a new page here. All right. We're supposed to write that. If you remember the directions on the front side, they said write it in a plus bi form. So I'm going to separate this into two fractions, one for the real number and one for the imaginary. My real number is going to be -5 over 149 minus my imaginary part is going to be 71 over 149, and I'll put the I at the end. You can put it in the numerator, but it's standard when you write a complex imaginary number to put it out at the end. That would be the final answer for this problem.